Hello everyone, my name is Gabby and welcome back to another episode of Tropes, Shonen and Dragon Ball. Our topic for this video, Super Mode.
What you're seeing now is my normal state. This is a Super Saiyan. And this is what is known as a Super Saiyan that has ascended past a Super Saiyan. Or you could just call this a Super Saiyan 2. And this
What's he doing?
is to go even further beyond!
And then Goku screams for around 3 minutes and gets even crazier hair. You know, that seems to exemplify everything about Dragon Ball Z. So much so that I'm sort of convinced it's supposed to be a self-parody. Last episode, we were talking about One-Winged Angel, or rather the ability of the villains to transform. While transformations have been part of the story for a very long time, it wasn't until the fight with Frieza where it began to be implemented to really extend the battle with a single opponent. There's a reason I made that episode before this one, and that's because the topic for this episode is essentially a response to One-Winged Angel becoming prevalent, because Super Mode is what happens when the heroes transform. What is a Super Mode? I classify it as a temporary transformation by a character in which they become significantly stronger, and it's almost always accompanied by a physical change. Super Mode is a trope that often needs to occur as a response to One-Winged Angel. You see, in the midst of a battle, if a villain suddenly transforms and becomes a lot stronger, overpowering the hero, while this does help to increase dramatic tension, it also asks the audience, how is the hero actually supposed to win? There are 3 possible answers to that dilemma. 1, the hero can find a way to reverse the villain's transformation. 2, they can outsmart the villain. Or 3, the hero has to also obtain a massive power-up, one that will place their power above who they're currently facing. The last of these options is the one that we'll be talking about. That is Super Mode. In terms of its use in Dragon Ball, Super Mode pretty much refers to one thing, and that is the Super Saiyan. It's what most people think of when they hear Super Mode in the first place. In fact, I'd say the popularization of Super Mode is one of Dragon Ball Z's most lasting legacies. But let's go back and dissect this from the very beginning. The Super Saiyan fits the criteria for a Super Mode. But what really is a Super Saiyan? Super Saiyan, Super Saiyajin, Super Savage, whatever you want to call it. Technically, the first mention of a Super Saiyan is in Dragon Ball Chapter 204. Nappa casually uses the term to explain the young Gohan's surprising power. But this Super Saiyan was not referring to the spiky-haired warriors we're familiar with later. The actual concept of the Super Saiyan was introduced quite a few chapters later, in Chapter 264, or Chapter 70 of the Z portion of the manga. Whilst monologuing about the Saiyan's seemingly ever-increasing combat ability, Frieza thinks that while they wouldn't be a threat to him, it would be inconvenient if they could become Super Saiyans. That's the first instance we hear of the transformation, a long time before we see a Super Saiyan in action. The important thing about how the Super Saiyan was used is that the Super Saiyan wasn't introduced purely as a transformation. It was introduced as a legend. Vegeta describes it upon seeing Goku's miraculous feats of strength after arriving on Namek. According to Vegeta, the Super Saiyan is a legendary warrior who appears once in 1,000 years and could overcome the wall that most gifted fighters cannot. It doesn't mention it being an actual transformation, it just describes an incredibly powerful Saiyan warrior. As a result, characters often claim that Goku or Vegeta were in fact the legendary Super Saiyan because that's what we assume a Super Saiyan is, a really powerful Saiyan. At this point, Goku and Vegeta both fit that description pretty well. But later, we find out, in one of the most iconic moments in all of anime, that the Super Saiyan is more than just a strong fighter. Many chapters later, in the fight against Frieza, Goku seemingly finishes him off using the Genki Dama, only for Frieza to miraculously survive. Deciding not to play around anymore, Frieza severely injures Piccolo, kills Krillin by blowing him up, and then threatens to do the same to Gohan. This makes Goku completely lose it for probably the 2nd time in his life. He fully gives in to anger, and this time, something very unexpected occurs. Goku is so enraged that he transforms. His entire appearance changes. His hair turns a golden color and stands up on end. His eyes turn a bluish green, and even his facial features change. His muscle mass increases, and Goku's eyes are now completely outlined as opposed to how his eyes are normally drawn. This may not seem significant, and it really isn't, but I think it's an interesting point to note. This appearance ends up becoming emblematic of the Super Saiyan transformation itself. It's established that the hair and eye changes are what distinguishes a Super Saiyan, because when Gohan leaves the battlefield, he understands the truth. Goku is a real Super Saiyan. And at that moment, we understand that all of Vegeta's assertions were false. After all, his hair never turned blonde, so we know he hadn't fulfilled the legend. The Super Saiyan serves both a thematic and a narrative purpose. Thematically, it represents Goku accepting his alien heritage and becoming what Frieza feared most, the reason Frieza destroyed the Saiyan homeworld to begin with. And in terms of narrative, Super Saiyan provides a quick and easy way for Goku to be more powerful than Frieza, who had outstripped everyone else in terms of power with his multiple transformations. But here on this channel, we're not just satisfied in knowing how it occurred, we ask why. That is, why was the Super Saiyan indicated by a physical change? And why blonde? Believe it or not, there's an actual answer to that last question. Akira Toriyama has stated in interviews that the reason he made the Super Saiyan blonde was so his assistant didn't have to spend all his time coloring in the black in Goku's hair. I am completely serious. I think this is one of my favorite fun facts of the entire franchise. Something that has become so iconic and has inspired so many imitations was initially made as a way to save on drawing time. The eyes were probably changed for a similar purpose, and the idea of the hair standing up was something Toriyama had been thinking and playing around with since the conception of Dragon Ball Z Movie 4, Lord Slug. Once again, it was there to contrast from Goku's normal state. And Goku's appearance changing serves another purpose. It gives the audience a clear visual indication that the transformation had occurred. Remember, power levels and scouters had been discarded at this point. You couldn't use numbers to indicate an opponent had gotten stronger, but if a character suddenly looks different, you can assume something has happened. Now that we've gone through the Super Saiyan's introduction and appearance, what about its use? Well, as befits the title, when Goku transforms into a Super Saiyan, his power increases immensely, enough to take on the seemingly invincible Frieza without too much difficulty. The general consensus is that the Super Saiyan transformation multiplies the user's existing strength by 50. This isn't something that's actually stated in the manga, and I don't always agree with it, but it's something worth noting. The thing we need to note is that back in 1991, the Super Saiyan was a massive risk for Akira Toriyama to take. Besides 2 brief rampages as an Ozaru, Goku had never transformed before. His appearance had never changed so drastically, and the transformation changed not only his appearance, but his personality. He became more ruthless, speaking with a more direct and harsh tone. It was incredibly different how Goku was normally presented over the last 6 years. See, Goku explained that to become a Super Saiyan, you need to possess a pure heart and be awakened by rage. As a result, the rage can easily consume the user if they're not used to it. They lose semblances of self-control and rational thought, instead being driven by their emotions. With Goku's newfound strength from transforming, he manages to easily overpower Frieza, with the only tension in the battle coming from when Frieza attempts to destroy the planet, a feat he explains will mean the end for even a Super Saiyan. And while Goku seemingly doesn't make it from the explosion, we find out later that he does survive, leaving the new Super Saiyan Son Goku still alive and ready to fight whenever a new threat might come. The problem was, the series didn't end there. Despite what some rumors say, the series was never intended to end there. And as a result, like the Kamehameha, flight, and other techniques, the Super Saiyan transformation, the feat of power demonstrated by Goku, was soon given to other characters in an attempt to increase the playing ground of competent fighters. First, to a mysterious stranger Trunks, revealed to be Vegeta's half-Saiyan son from the future. Then later to Vegeta himself. At this point, the requirements for fulfilling the legend started being stretched a little. Vegeta claims he managed to transform from a heart of pure evil. And later characters don't give a justification for transforming at all. As befitting Dragon Ball, the next batch of villains after Frieza had to be somewhat more powerful than the previous ones. So the heroes had to find ways to get stronger to actually stand a chance. But how were you supposed to get stronger than a legendary transformation that even the Emperor of the Universe was afraid of? The answer to that was, you just do. Just train hard and you can go beyond any limit. Once threats stronger than a Super Saiyan occur with the arrivals of androids 17 and 18, the Saiyan's immediate plan is to find a way to surpass a Super Saiyan, to go beyond their old limits and to get even stronger. The first attempt at this occurs with Vegeta and Trunks. In an attempt to stop the biomonster Cell, Goku shows everyone an entrance to the Room of Spirit and Time, a world where time moves incredibly slowly. Combining that with the harsh conditions, he believes that training for so long there could be enough to actually unlock a level of power beyond a Super Saiyan. Goku doesn't know if it's actually possible, but he gives everything he has into trying. And a year in the Room of Spirit and Time later, Vegeta and Trunks seem to actually succeed this. When they arrive to fight Cell, they show off what seems to be entirely new forms of Super Saiyan, a new super mode per se. These super modes make them bulkier with spikier hair and clearly increase their power, so much so that Cell in his second form becomes a cakewalk to them. Trunks actually goes a step too far and increases his power so much that it decreases his speed, making it less of a super mode and more of an equivalent exchange. When Goku and Gohan take their turn in the Room and Spirit of Time, after getting Gohan to be a Super Saiyan, Goku realizes the easiest way to surpass a Super Saiyan is to try and become accustomed to the Super Saiyan transformation like it's their regular state, without any of the strain normally associated with it. Basically, he decides to truly understand what he's got before trying to go beyond it. To do that, their training pretty much consists of staying as a Super Saiyan all the time. This is presented as a drastically different way of training than Vegeta and Trunks, and it seems seemingly more efficient. Once Goku and Gohan have finished their training, they manage to almost completely remove any sort of strain or discomfort, resulting in it being easier to fight in that state. But while that does make them more powerful, it wasn't a level beyond a Super Saiyan, which is what they were intending to find. It was simply a mastery of the original Super Saiyan form itself. After all that build-up, the actual level beyond Super Saiyan isn't achieved first by Goku, but by Gohan. Already a Super Saiyan in his fight against Cell, he explains to Cell his tendency to gain massive boosts in power whenever he flies into a rage. When Cell pushes this anger, desiring to fight Gohan at his strongest, Gohan's resulting power-up is once again accompanied by a physical change, becoming what is now referred to as Super Saiyan 2. The distinguishing trait of Super Saiyan 2 is that, on top of the features of Super Saiyan, the user also gains a lightning-like aura. And when applicable, their hair is even spikier than as a regular Super Saiyan. In this first appearance, Super Saiyan 2 is not named as such. In fact, it's not even referred to as the next level beyond Super Saiyan. Instead, it's seen as Gohan's hidden power unleashed to its full extent. Story-wise, it functions almost identically to the Super Saiyan's first appearance. It's a transformation of the hero in order to defeat a villain who had become too powerful. And while it provides a massive increase in power, it also changes their personality rather drastically to become cruel and sadistic, not listening to reason or logic. And once again, the problem was that the story didn't end there. At this point, the concept of super mode had been cemented firmly in the audience's mind. Everyone knew what a Super Saiyan was, and the transformation itself had stopped becoming a rare legend a long time ago. With the introduction of a new, more powerful villain in Majin Buu, the heroes had to become even more powerful to combat it. And the easiest way to get stronger was just to reveal another Super Saiyan form. That clip I showed you at the start was almost educational. After the ridiculous amount of forms during Cell Saga, this one scene in the Majin Buu saga attempts to simplify things. Goku is explaining to the audience what the different levels of Super Saiyan are, what they're called, and what they looked like. There's Super Saiyan, the level beyond that called Super Saiyan 2, and now, it turns out there's a level even beyond that, Super Saiyan 3. Super Saiyan 3 is characterized by its incredible hair growth. It also makes the user's eyebrows disappear for some reason. However, unlike the previous transformations, Super Saiyan 2 wasn't introduced as a climactic way to defeat the new, stronger villain. It was first shown to us by Goku as a last-ditch effort to stall for time against Majin Buu, so Trunks could obtain the Dragon Radar before the city was destroyed. He claims it was a form that he had achieved during his 7 years of training in the afterlife, but had never used it until now as it uses up too much energy in the living world. Later on, Super Saiyan 3 is used by Gotenks and Goku against Majin Buu, but surprisingly, it's never used to defeat him. Gotenks' Super Saiyan 3 form has a time limit of 5 minutes, which expires before he is able to defeat Buu. A similar situation happens to Goku later on, forcing him to use the Genki Dama to defeat Buu once and for all. This puts Super Saiyan 3 in an unusual situation. It's a super mode that isn't used to defeat a main villain in the final showdown. As to why such an ultimately useless transformation was introduced, I don't have a proper answer, but my guess is that Super Saiyan 3 wasn't helpful in the end because at that point it would have become predictable. And that is one of the problems of super mode. It can be predictable. In the same way the audience is expecting new villains to be able to transform in some way, they're also expecting the heroes to be able to unlock new Super Saiyan forms with seemingly little context given. While Super Saiyan had clear requirements, Super Saiyan 2 and 3 were less clear, with them seemingly being unlocked by characters through harsh training. The other issue with how super mode was used was by restricting Super Saiyan to the Saiyan alien species, it marks the official end of the human characters being able to stay at least one step behind Goku in power. While it was assumed that they could follow similar training regimens to catch up to what Goku used to be like, they were never given the capacity to transform. Super Saiyan started the trend that if you're not a Saiyan, you're completely useless. And that was how super mode was used in the story of Dragon Ball. There have been some new super modes in the most recent material as well as in Dragon Ball GT, but I am not going to be referring to those. If you want to know why, it's because this series is mainly talking about how the tropes were popularized and created in the original Dragon Ball serialization, that is, the original manga. GT and Super have, in some part, been influenced by the original success. These tropes occur because the original made it popular in the first place. This is true for the non-canon Toei movies as well. It's in super modes used outside of Dragon Ball where its legacy is very apparent. Many shonen manga and anime created after 1991 have used super mode in some way, especially in terms of their main characters. From Luffy's Gears to Naruto's Sage Mode, giving the main character a super mode has become an almost necessary part of a long-running battle shonen. But the super mode that takes perhaps the largest inspiration from the Super Saiyan is probably Bankai from Bleach. For one, it's introduced as part of the character's natural repertoire. It also starts off incredibly rare, but becomes gradually easier as time goes on. And while it's introduced as a pinnacle of strength, there are ways to get stronger later on in the story. Super mode, whether you enjoy it or not, has become one of Dragon Ball's most lasting legacies. Even though it only became a trope about halfway through the series, its impact on the story and other stories to come cannot be denied. So that brings our two-part series about transformations to a close. Now where do we go from here? Well, I think next time we're going to go and look into character archetypes, starting with Goku in Idiot Hero. See you then.